Despite not being the first game in the series, FNAF 2 is the game that really marked the beginning of the story for this franchise. We have cutscenes, multiple sets of animatronics, actual confirmed dates, multiple names for the night guards, and whatever the paper pals are. But today, we're not going to be talking about any of those things. Maybe another time, but for now, I want to focus on an arguably bigger thing. Something that's been sticking out in my brain for a few weeks now. Give gifts, give life. This is one of the death minigames in FNAF 2, and it's weird. I think that a lot of people have taken the event of this minigame way too literally, and I want to talk about that and tell you what I think is really going on here. But first, a question. What do you think giving life means in the context of this series? This is important to the rest of the video, and I have an answer that I imagine not all of you have heard before. So leave your own answers in the comments, like and subscribe while you're down there, and let's talk about what's going on in one of the first minigames of the entire franchise. Let's start off with a quick run through. You're controlling the puppet in this minigame, and you're in a small room with 4 dead children. You slowly float toward the children one at a time, and give each of them a large gift box, giving gifts. Then, a few moments later, you float over to all of the kids again and give them an animatronic mask, giving life. Once the final child puts on a mask, you can see a dead kid appear in the center of the room for a few frames, before the Golden Freddy jump scare covers it up and ends the minigame. All in all, it's a pretty simple minigame, but it's led to some people believing something that I just can't agree with. The puppet being the one that stuffed the children into the animatronics, causing their possession. I just don't agree with this whatsoever, and there are a number of reasons as to why. Not only because it's confirmed in other continuities that William is the one to stuff the children into the costumes, but, well, let me put it like this. You know how a Golden Freddy jump scare is the thing that causes this minigame to end? Well, that's the only animatronic that didn't get their head put onto a child here. And we can see that 5th child pop up on screen before the minigame ends, and they're not wearing a mask. But despite this, Golden Freddy is still the one to end this minigame. So if Golden Freddy was possessed without the puppet putting a mask on the dead body, then why do we think that the puppet putting masks on the rest of the kids is what caused their possession? Realistically, that doesn't really have a good basis. These masks have to represent something else, something that people haven't considered before. And I think that I know what that might be. Think about what this minigame is about at its most basic level. The puppet is going around giving gifts to the dead kids, and then they wear masks of their respective animatronics. If that sounds familiar, that's because it should, because that's exactly what we see in FNAF 3's Happiest Day. If you replace the giant birthday cake for a gift box, almost the exact same thing is happening here. And if you ask me, I think that's an intentional detail. I think that Happiest Day is the continuation and ultimate conclusion of what the puppet started in Give Gifts, Give Life. But maybe I'm getting a bit too ahead of myself here. Let's take a step back and talk about how this makes any sense in terms of storytelling. In the FNAF 2 minigame, Charlie is helping the rest of the kids in some way, whatever that may be. But just when she helps the 4th child, Golden Freddy appears and puts a stop to everything. Golden Freddy's appearance is what immediately ends this minigame. I'm interpreting this as Golden Freddy putting a stop to whatever's happening here. As for what that is, well, that's where things get a bit tricky. The puppet is, quote-unquote, giving life here. And that term really puts a hole into this theory at first glance. What could give life possibly mean, other than literally giving the kids life, causing them to possess their respective animatronics? Well, to explain that, let's go take a look at Jake and the Stitch Wraith Singers. At the end of the Stingers, Jake goes on to help all of the dead kids who have been suffering find their peace. And while we don't see every example of this happening, we do see how he helps Millie, the main character from Count the Ways. He didn't lead her for long, though. In what felt like an instant, Jake was there, and then gone. He disappeared, and Millie found herself on her grandpa's front porch. Through the big picture window, Millie could see her family gathering around the table. Behind them, the Christmas tree was lit up, just like it had been when she'd left the house. And for some reason, Millie was happy to see it. She was happy to see her family, too. Not sure why she felt so good all of a sudden, but not really caring, Millie rushed across the porch. She threw open the door and ran into the room. Her grandpa greeted her with a smile and a hug, which Millie, for once, was happy to receive. For the first time she could remember, Millie felt like she was home. The way that this reads to me is Jake giving Millie a second chance at actually enjoying life. One final happy memory that she can throw herself into. One final chance to feel at peace, like she belongs. So, in a way, Jake is quite literally giving Millie life. Life that she had only realized how much he wanted during the moments before her death. And that peace was enough to help her finally move on. And if that sounds familiar, that's because it's eerily similar to what we're seeing in Happiest Day. When the child puts on the Golden Freddy mask, look at where he is. Standing at a table with the rest of the children already wearing their masks, in front of a massive birthday cake. This is literally the inverse of the crying child's death. A happy birthday party surrounded by friendly faces wearing animatronic masks. compared to being carried by bullies in masks and sentenced to a tragedy. Meanwhile, Millie, who died on Christmas Eve, received the memory of running into her grandpa's arms with a big Christmas tree lit up in the room. Gaining the ability to peacefully move on is represented by experiencing a memory that replaces your tragedy with happiness. The exact same thing is happening to these two characters, and look at how it's represented in Happiest Day, with the child receiving a gift and then wearing the animatronic mask. Giving life does mean giving the kids a second chance at life, but not through possession. Instead, it's giving them a glimpse at what life could have been like without their sorrow, their ideal day, their happiest day. In FNAF 2, we're seeing Charlie's first attempt at making this happen, before it gets stopped by Golden Freddy. Then, in Happiest Day, we can see all of the kids still there, still wearing their masks, waiting. They're all waiting there for Golden Freddy's spirit to be ready to move on, so that they could all pass on together. This leaves us with just one question. Or, well, I guess two questions, but they're kinda one and the same. Why did Golden Freddy stop the first Happiest Day from going through? And what changed between then and FNAF 3's Happiest Day? Well, that's where things get a little bit complicated. My original thought for what changed between these two games was follow me. At first glance, and in the context of FNAF 1 to 3 as a trilogy, it would make sense for Golden Freddy's spirit to not be willing to rest until William Afton suffered the consequences of his actions, and this would definitely be the perfect example of exactly that. However, that would only really make sense if Cassidy was the one to receive a Happiest Day here, and quite frankly, I just don't really like that. Narratively speaking, and just looking at Happiest Day as a whole, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for that to be the case. It really feels like this is meant to be the crying child's moment. But if this is the crying child's moment, then it wouldn't really make sense for Follow Me to be the event that causes the difference between Give Gifts, Give Life and Happiest Day. Don't get me wrong, I don't have any reason to believe that Crying Child actually likes his father or anything of the sort, but I don't think that his father getting spring-locked would be enough for him to finally be able to rest either. It's almost certainly something else, and I think there's one thing in particular that takes the cake: FNAF World. The entire purpose of FNAF World is, quite literally, to set up Happiest Day. That's the entire purpose of the clock ending. You're setting up all of the minigames that you end up playing throughout FNAF 3. Quite frankly, FNAF World is a subject that deserves a video of its own, which I will probably get to eventually, especially since it's been taking up a lot of my mind space recently. So, to prevent myself from bloating this video too much, let me go over some of the things that I think about FNAF World. First of all, the intro and ending dialogue of the game from Yellow Eyes. I think that the person on the receiving end of this dialogue is almost certainly the crying child, especially considering terms like "I will put you back together" and "we are still your friends" are being used. As for the person speaking here, well, that's a bit harder to answer, but I think that it's Cassidy. I know a lot of people hear Cassidy and think of the vengeful spirit, but let's be honest with ourselves. Cassidy is a lot more than just a spirit we see in Ultimate Custom Night. Throughout the logbook, we see her constant interactions with the crying child. She speaks to him and seemingly looks through his mind, bringing up questions that nobody who just met him would know. She's trying to help the crying child remember who he is and everything about his past, and because of that, I fully believe that she's the most likely candidate for the person helping set the breadcrumbs for Happiest Day, so that the crying child can find his peace. And in context with the rest of this video, that actually lines up pretty perfectly with what I've been saying. Think about it. When the puppet is giving gifts and life to the rest of the children, Golden Freddy is nowhere to be seen. It's only when the fifth child appears on screen that Golden Freddy stops things. What if that's not Cassidy lashing out, but instead, it's Cassidy trying to protect the crying child? He's much more broken than the MCI kids, and I think that Cassidy is fully aware of that fact. So broken, in fact, that it took a lot more effort to try and actually fix him and help him move on. So instead of just letting the puppet do the same thing to him as the rest of the MCI kids, she's stopping that and setting up FNAF World, where the breadcrumbs can be laid for the crying child to find. And when that finally happens, whenever it is, well, that's when we get Happiest Day. That's when the crying child is able to put on his mask and drift away with everyone else, putting an end to his afterlife. And that is what I think the true story behind both Give Gifts, Give Life, and Happiest Day are. Two parts of the same story, fully connected through the pieces laid out by FNAF World. And that's where I'm going to end things for today. Thanks for watching. This is the fastest I've ever uploaded 2 videos together in literal months, which is honestly a little bit embarrassing, but whatever. T-Dreads is catching up to me in subscribers, and I cannot allow that to happen. So maybe that'll be my motivation to finally start getting consistent again. We'll see. And like I said earlier, I think that FNAF World deserves a video of its own to go over all the specifics of that game. I'd like to do that someday, despite my problems with that video game, so if you'd be interested, let me know in the comments, and let me know what you thought of this video while you're at it. This was originally going to be a video of me analyzing everything in FNAF 2, essentially a sequel to my FNAF 1 video from last year, but I realized that I had a lot to say about this subject in particular, and that I needed to fully flesh it out and give it its own video. As for the rest of FNAF 2, yeah, maybe soon, but that game kinda pisses me off, so maybe not. Anyway, I'm out of here. Thanks for listening to me yap about the 3 worst games in the entire franchise. Take it easy.